Have you been thinking about purchasing a new camera that would perfectly suit all of your music video needs? Something that's a little bit cheaper than a cinema camera? Well, I have the perfect camera for you. Yo, what's up guys? It's Sitch here from Subtle Cinematics, and today we're going to be talking about my new favorite run and gun music video camera, the Sony FX3. I've been shooting off this thing for a few months so far, and I don't have much bad to say about it. The first thing that I want to mention is that I used to shoot everything off of my Sony A6400, but I felt like I was finally at the point of my career where I could produce better content if I did have newer gear. I knew everything about my A6400, and I knew what I didn't like about it because I was using it for so long. I know that I needed something that could at least shoot 4K 60fps and 120 fps with 10-bit color. The Sony A6400 limited me to 8-bit color, which was good right when I bought the camera, but as I progressed throughout my career and started taking color grading more seriously, I realized that 8-bit just wasn't gonna cut it. I was literally pushing the 8-bit color to its limits, and the dynamic range just wasn't there. This made me quickly realize that I needed something that could process more information and edit footage that wouldn't break apart so easily during the color grading process. 8-bit footage aside, I needed something that had stabilization. My A6400 just wasn't cutting it, even when I would rig it up to my DJI Ronin RS2. I still had unnecessary camera jitters that were compromising my shots. I quickly grew to hate that my camera didn't have in-body stabilization. I knew this was a feature that my upgraded camera definitely needed to have. And lastly, I wanted something that was a low light killer, because my biggest struggle was not having enough light in my scenes, as I don't have big lights and light modifiers. After doing some research, I found the Sony FX3, and I started to save up for the money that I've made from shooting, and I finally got my hands on it. As you can tell, it looks a bit different than other mirrorless Sony cameras, but it actually shares the same internals as the Sony A7S3, which is one of Sony's more high-end, video-oriented mirrorless cameras. With that being said, let's take a closer look at this thing.
If you guys are digging Matt's Sony FX3 review, you should seriously go check out the first link that you see in the description of this video, as we just released an online music video course packed with over 200 music video tutorials. Priced at under $1 per music video lesson, I can confidently say that this is the most in-depth online music video course tailored specifically for freelancers on the internet today. We'll catch you guys back in the review.
You have dedicated buttons for white balance, ISO, and shutter. We got 2 SD card slots, which is something that I've never had before, so I'm pretty stoked on that. And another dope thing about this camera is that you can lock the exposure so you don't accidentally bump any of the buttons or dials while you're shooting. The major difference between the FX3 and the A7S3 is that there's no viewfinder, but as a video shooter, I wouldn't be using that anyways, and if I do take photos, the small LCD screen is good enough for me. The tally lights are also something that is new, so now you will know when you're recording, as you can see the big bright lights on the camera. Another feature that I've been using quite frequently is the clear image zoom. When I first got the camera, I only had prime lenses, such as the Sigma 24mm 1.4. This isn't a new feature, but it is one that not many people talk about. I can turn my 24mm into a 35mm simply by pressing this button and zooming in. The FX3 can clear image zoom up to 1.5 times, which can be really useful when trying to get certain shots but not having the right focal length. If you have enjoyed the video so far, please hit that like and subscribe button. I'd like to get this video to 500 likes. It helps us out a lot more than you think. We drop videos on all things filmmaking, and we also have a Facebook community called Learn Freelance Filmmaking, where you can get direct access to our team and the community that we are building to answer any technical film-related questions, business of filmmaking questions, or get constructive feedback on your edits, as well as exclusive discounts to products that we release. Over the past couple months, I've shot about 4 or 5 music videos with the camera, and they have all been run and gun styled videos. I pull up to the artist, we find a spot to shoot, I sometimes set up some small tube lights, and that's pretty much it. For a lot of these projects, I'll just go in, I'll know the song and kind of the vibe to it, but I won't really know what we'll be doing, whether that be performance scenes or B-roll, and sometimes time is a big factor, as finding locations can be really hard with COVID. So if we do get a spot, we might only be able to shoot for an hour or two. So in these situations, I'm pretty much always shooting 4K 60 FPS. This is simply because I don't know if I'll have time to shoot extra B-roll, so when I am shooting a performance scene, I'll have the ability to use these scenes as B-roll since I shot them at 60 FPS. Of course, these scenes may not look as crisp and energetic as 24 FPS shots, but it is what it is. This brings me to my next point, which is why I love this camera so much. It doesn't overheat when shooting 4K 60 for long periods of time. The FX3 has a pretty big internal fan that keeps this thing cooled down when shooting over long periods of time. Being able to shoot 4K 60 whenever I need is actually super dope to have. I've used the R6 a few times on corporate shoots. I shot about 2 minutes worth of 4K 60 and I was forced to either switch back into 24 FPS or to sit there and wait until the camera cooled down. I would have been waiting for at least 10 to 15 minutes, which isn't a good look on set, especially when you're on set with paying clients. I did a good amount of research on cameras that don't have overheating problems, and the FX3 was a clear winner in my opinion. As many of you guys probably know, a lot of hip-hop artists like dark night scenes, and personally I found myself shooting low-light indoor and outdoor scenes a lot more in the recent years. Before I got my FX3 and I was still using my Sony A6400, this was difficult for me. I had to set up my little pocket lights and blast them full power to try to minimize the grain that came from the camera. With my FX3, this is not something I will ever have to worry about. Here's why. The FX3 has something called dual base ISO. That means the camera performs best at 2 certain ISO values, but these ISO values only apply to those who are shooting in S-Log, what I shoot in. The first value is 640 ISO, which is mostly going to be used when you're outside and you don't need a whole lot of light. The second is 12,800 ISO. I know, it's crazy. It can pretty much shoot scenes outside in pitch black without needing any supplementary lighting. I'm not saying that you shouldn't use lighting and only rely on the unbelievably awesome low light capabilities of the FX3. However, not all of us can afford Aperture 300Ds with light modifiers and power them with expensive V-mount batteries when filming lower budget music videos with a one-man crew. The FX3 can also take some pretty deadly low light pictures due to its lower megapixel sensor. Here's a few examples. Along with these nutty low light capabilities, the IBIS is great, especially when you're starting to rig the camera out, which was quite a difference when comparing it to my old A6400. The camera itself isn't very heavy, so when using a gimbal for weddings or longer music video sets, you can run this thing for a decent amount of time until your back gives out on you. I personally think that the FX3 is the ultimate run and gun music video camera because the ergonomics are super video friendly. We have dedicated ISO buttons, aperture buttons, shutter speed buttons, which makes changing settings very efficient. The dual base ISO is a game changer when it comes to low light scenarios. You get high quality video with minimal amounts of grain. And lastly, the IBIS is awesome, especially when you start to rig the camera out and add weight to it, which will improve the look of your handheld shots for music videos. And that is why I think the Sony FX3 is one of the best run and gun cameras for music videos in 2022, and I would highly recommend it to anyone who is looking to upgrade camera systems anytime soon. There will be a link in the description of the video with all of the gear that I touched on if you are interested in checking that out. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.